Welcome back to the Echelon podcast, where you either get it or maybe you don't. I'm your host, Adam Zimmerman, with my co-host, James McCabe. James, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Adam. I'm calling from the great state of Colorado, and judging from where you're located, I think there's a map of Vancouver behind you. Do I have that right?
You
No,
do,
it's
but
not
that's not where
Vancouver.
I'm calling from.
Where are
That
you
is
calling?
where my sister-in-law lives. She lives in right on the border of Vancouver and Washington. So
Interesting. So where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Central Michigan.
Oh, that's where your
Yeah,
wife is from, right?
that's right. She's from Michigan. Yeah, they live on a bunch of land. Actually, my brother-in-law has made a really cool trail in his backyard, mountain bike trail. It's only a
Mm-hmm.
mile long, but it's got some cool features, and he did the whole thing himself. He paved the whole thing, and I think he's actually out there doing work on it right now. But haven't tested it out because we've gotten a bunch of rain.
Yeah.
So you don't want to ride on it and mess it up. So we're kind of waiting until it dries out. But once it's dry, I'm gonna head out there and definitely hit up the trail so I can get his KOM on the loop. So should be fun.
Man, you make a Strava segment. Yeah. Rain. Such a weird thing for us here in Colorado. We're not used to it. I don't think it's rained for the past week here. The smoke from the forest fires did blow in yesterday, made yesterday's ride a little dry
Yeah.
and a couple coughing going on. But all the more reason to move inside as the fall winter racing season is upon us and arguably Swift's most popular time of year.
Hmm.
Um, what's your game plan for the fall winter series? We obviously have a full agenda here. A couple things definitely want to talk about, including the Swift Pro Am series coming up. I myself just got off a call with a bunch of other team managers in Swift HQ. So some things I cannot share with everyone on here quite yet, but I can certainly allude to a couple of them. But
Cool.
yeah,
Yeah, I'll be
Adam, what's
looking.
your plan?
Yeah, I'll be looking forward to hearing how the call was and stuff because I wasn't on that. I heard a little bits and pieces of information from my team, but I would rather
Mm-hmm.
put it on you to see what we're allowed to say and what we're not because I don't know. In regards to my specific goals, I'm probably not going to be in this series. I just can't work it out with my schedule and getting in there with watching Maddie all day. So
Mm-hmm.
I'll be taking a backseat to that, unfortunately. But I'll hopefully be able to help them out with some course profile tactics and things like that, and just help them along the way while they're racing it. So yeah, I don't know. Do you want to start with that, man? What do you want to talk about?
Well, what are you going to do then if you're not doing the fall series? You're just going to target one-off races, or you're going to target a whole series? I know we have a plan for draft, and I'll dive into that here in a little bit.
So that's a good question. I mean, usually the way my schedule works is once I hit the fall, like late fall and early winter, I start just putting it on as a full season of racing. I also try
Mm-hmm.
to throw in a ton of intervals so that I'm working towards my mountain bike racing goals for next year. And fingers crossed, I'm really hoping that we have a full season here in Colorado of racing outside, because obviously this year we just didn't get that, which is unfortunate.
Yep.
So most of my riding in general will be geared towards racing, hopefully racing next year. So that's just keeping my fitness up, doing a ton of racing on Zwift, and then getting a bunch of intervals, like long, steady intervals on like Alp or Ventoux or things like that. So
Mountain bike racing, right? That's what you're talking about for racing for next year.
yeah, yeah, for sure. That'd be my second year racing pro in the mountain bike cross country. So hopefully get some better results than last year because it was an ass kicker last year, man.
Might be an ass kicker for you next year too, considering you have everyone that's fresh and training
That's
all the
true.
time,
Yeah.
and they're getting into it. I know for the draft side of the fence, just much like your team, we got invited to the Premier League, and we've been busy putting together rosters. For those that don't know, the Premier League is for teams that participated in qualifying events on Swift. And if your team earned a certain number of points, you're eligible to receive an invite to the Premier League. This is the first time Swift is doing this type of Premier League racing. And this series is going to run from the middle of October to the middle of December. And got a sneak peek here. There's going to be another series starting in the middle of January that's going to mirror a very similar format. So for those that didn't make the first league, no big deal. There will be another league coming, and I will talk about how that qualifying process actually works and some of the details that were shared there. Um, but it's super exciting. I think Swift Racing has certainly come a long way, and they're certainly trying to really market this event a lot more than I'd say any other event they've done, even more than the virtual Tour de France that we talked about last time, which kind of was a flop, I think, for the community as a whole, right? The community was kind of like, I don't know what this is. I'm not too interested in it. And it was hard for spectators to really relate to the avatar that was in the game. Yeah, so we'll be targeting primarily that series. There's the World Time Trial series. That's certainly one of the more favorite ones. Everyone likes a good TTT every now and then. But I might actually try another platform here and there. Road Grand Tours, I saw they did something with USA Crits recently. It didn't look like the most appealing product, but why not? We have a
Have
smart
you ridden
trainer
on
that
there
I can hear.
before, or?
I have not. Have you?
Oh, okay. Yeah, a bunch actually.
Really?
I've ridden Monbon too. I've done a couple of races so far.
On Road Grand
Um,
Tours, because there's Mod 2
yeah,
on
yeah,
Swift
on
now.
Road Grand Tours. Yeah,
Yeah.
RGT, I guess that's what it's called. Yeah. So
RGT.
I thought it wasn't bad. I thought the avatar looked kind of funny when you were sprinting and
Yeah.
things like that, and the drafting was way off. At least
Interesting.
from comparing that to Zwift, it felt very different. You would
Mm-hmm.
shoot past somebody and then you wouldn't, or you could ride 5 watts per kilo behind someone that was doing 3 watts per kilo. It was just really odd kind of dynamics, but it's a start at something new for sure.
Yeah. It's just to mix it up, right? Swift has a really nice product already. One thing that was alluded to with this upcoming race series is you'll probably notice as a spectator and probably as a racer, there might be some enhancements to the UI. So I think they're going to use this as a refresh moment for some of their
Enhancements.
products,
What do you
which
mean? Like, what do you mean by that?
you didn't give too many details, but
Oh.
essentially the gameplay as you look and you see it today probably will feel slightly different in this Premier League. So we should talk a little bit more about the Premier League, right? And what some of the goals here are. They
Sure.
definitely, they being Swift is certainly acknowledged. And so, most of the reason why we have this podcast is that we know Swift racing is not the most polished product as the community. We know we're trying to take a product that I would say Swift went halfway into, and all of a sudden you got all these athletes such as yourself and me jumping on there trying to, race people. And as a result, it never really took off or never really became polished. It's mostly just a group riding platform, and they give you results at the end. Sounds like that plan is changing for the remainder of the year and through 2021, where it's time to take Swift racing to the next level, is the promise here. And what does that usually mean? It means leaning on the community more. And that was the most refreshing thing I heard out of this meeting is we're not there. The Swift sponsored racing leagues are not going to go after the Grand Tour riders. They're not going to go after the UCI points leaders. They're going to go after the community. But what that also tells me is there's going to be a separate race series potentially evolving. Obviously, no confirmation here. That is just for UCI riders and is just for World Tour riders, leveraging Swift as a platform. And I think we started to see that during the COVID lockdown in many countries when you had Team Ineos doing their own race up the Alp, right? Great viewership. The average cycling fan kind of knew what was going on and could get drawn into the platform. But again, as community members, we were like, this is not great. Like,
Right.
it doesn't matter to us, right? So I think they acknowledge there's two different audiences here. There's two different disciplines coming about. And that's perhaps the most interesting piece of takeaway for at least out of this meeting. I have a couple notes here as well.
Let me just say something. That's a stark contrast to the past because I've done, I don't know, at least 4 or 5 different pro-am races over the last 3 years, and probably more than that actually. I can't even count, but most of them have been, here are the pro teams, and we're going to add a couple of community teams as well because we should, you know.
Yep.
But it seemed like we were always the afterthought, and the pro teams were always the center of attention. So it seems, based on what you're saying, and I'm trying to be optimistic here, I really am. You're based on what you're saying is that they're going to be making this more about the community and not these outside pro teams that might not care. Because if you remember last time, that's what we talked about so much, was how we didn't even really care about watching the Tour de France on Zwift because it was just a
Right.
bunch of guys, mostly a bunch of guys who didn't really take the game seriously.
Right. And it was the same thing that happened in April when we had the the Alpecin Phoenix team against all the Zwift community teams, right? The infographic, I have it up on my phone here. It has a picture of the Alpecin Phoenix Pro Tour jersey, the words verse, and then the 7 community teams on Zwift. So that alone kind of showed how Zwift was doing their positioning, right? It's like, how do you
Hmm.
take a professional cycling team as we know it today, and how they stack against these 7 community teams? Well, the results indicated the pro team doesn't matter. They weren't good enough. They didn't catch
Right.
up, right? And I think that was
Right.
those riders had some level of I don't know if I really think about this thing. If you listen to other podcasts, like the Move podcast that Lance has, they bash Zwift racing on the regular, right? Probably
Totally.
because
Totally.
they get on there and they just get blown out. But that's what happens to a lot of pros. So you give the pros their own race series, their own safe bubble for them to play against each other, and they will have their own results. Then you give the community that they've been racing on this platform for who knows how many years. They know how the game works. They know what type of fitness is required. You and I both know that you can be the best crit racer in Colorado, and then you jump on Zwift and you're in the back of a crit city race
Totally.
without hesitation. So it's just strategy, right? With anything else.
Yeah.
I do like how you said you were trying to be optimistic here, and I think that's kind of everyone's general consensus.
Mm.
We
I
just want
really
to
am.
be.
I hope for the best, but it's hard to be totally, committed to this when I know what's happened in the past. That's all. You know,
Yep.
they throw a bunch of marketing stuff and it just gets all messy, and then the race, in a sense, is just an afterthought.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really curious to see how this goes, especially not being somebody who's taking part in it, and looking at it from the outside in.
Yep. And I think actually that point was pretty important, and they brought this up, right? So essentially, how do you draw more people into the Zwift racing community, right? It's pretty easy for you to draw people into your local downtown crit, right?
Hmm.
The
Hmm.
streets are closed. There's people walking outside. Hey, what's this thing? Oh, it's a bike race.
Hmm.
That's pretty easy to people to understand. But when you're browsing Twitch or you're browsing Facebook and you see a video of digital avatars, you don't know if it's some guy with a controller sitting on their couch or if it's someone
Right.
actually, an athlete behind the avatar, right? So, and that's what Zwift is certainly trying to promote is like, who are the people that are actually racing in the game? How can we give them some, instead, like if you look at the Zwift social medias, it's all about look at the avatars riding around the game, look at the avatars running around the game, right? And then
Hmm.
occasionally
Hmm.
you see, hey, Zwift, Swift Academy Tri League, like here's one of the athletes, and it's just like a photo of them. All right, you don't really get to. It's hard to really tie the avatar to the person. So that's something they seem like they want to do more, and that's probably going to bring more of that marketing that you talked about, right? Here's the
Hmm.
hype. Here's the interviews. Here's my take as a team director. Here's your take as an athlete on what just happened, and whether that's done all through Zoom calls will probably be the reality for this series, and hopefully you can have more in-person type stuff, which was not referenced during this meeting, at some point next year. Fingers crossed, but I think there's other things at play before we can actually do in-person anything anytime soon.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Well, time will tell, right? Time will tell, and we'll see. What's the first course? Are you allowed to say that?
I can.
Oh, okay.
I can.
I,
I
I
can pull that
I
up.
should probably know that considering my team is in it, but I don't.
That's correct.
Yeah.
It's a team time trial, if
Ooh,
memory serves me
TTT.
right.
Okay.
Yeah, which is
Okay.
why I was all excited about that
Have you
earlier.
ever done a team time trial?
In real life?
No, no, no. In the game.
Oh, in the game? Yeah,
Huh.
it's not as much fun as real life for sure.
Okay. Well, yeah.
Um,
Still
I
painful
mean,
though.
it's still painful, yeah. I thought about doing the Cherry Creek time trial over here the other night. I know it's not a
Hmm.
team time trial,
Hmm.
um, but it's something.
Hmm.
It's still hard, and I still hate team time trials because they're hard.
My
Okay,
team keeps wanting me to get onto they're doing this Thursday night. I think it's WTRL or one of those, team time
well,
trial things. I can never make it, and I want to actually do it with them just to see what it's like, So.
so that's the most important part, and there's a big reason why. So here's the schedule for this 8-week series. October 12th is a scratch race in Watopia, Big Foothills, 1 lap, 50 kilometers. And there's team points in there. I think that's a pretty nice opener. Week 2 is a team time trial in
Hmm.
France on the RGV course, 1 lap, 24 kilometers. And that is actually going to, and there is several team time trials in here. Week 3 is
Nice.
another scratch race, October 26th, Richmond, UCI Worlds course. I think that's still the hardest course on Zwift, but definitely the least utilized. Week 4, November 2nd, is another team time trial for Wachovia on the Magnificent 8. So that's going to be pretty tough.
Okay, that's a tough
Get
one.
that figure
Yeah,
eight. Yep. November 9th, week 5 is a scratch race on your favorite course, the New York Everything Bagel, 34 kilometers.
dude,
Um,
everything bagels from New York are amazing.
I
Amazing.
know. And everything egg
Toasted
bagel.
with cream cheese. Oh, hits the spot, man. Cup of
Yeah,
coffee.
but have you had an egg bagel though? An everything egg bagel?
I have, of course, man. Of
Yeah,
course.
that's the only way to do
I'm
it.
I'm a I'm a Jew from New York City or Long Island. Come
You
on.
said it. I couldn't. Um, week 6, November 9th, is another team time trial. London, greatest London flat. I think that's going to be the most boring race, but I think that's the most
Yep.
pure team time trial you can do, considering how flat and gradual that entire course is.
That's a great
Uh,
course for a team time trial.
yeah, but it's like compared to after watching the Magnificent Eight and then the France one, it's kind of just rollers.
Hmm.
So I
Hmm.
think equipment will be interesting. There's certainly restrictions on equipment again, like no disc wheel because not everyone can have it. Um, I always think that's so interesting, and kudos to everyone at Swift Insider that always does those new equipment tests. Like I saw Canyon had a new road bike drop in, and they were doing all these tests on it. Like
Hmm.
I don't think enough about that because I usually just ride the Tron bike most of the time when I'm in the game.
Yeah.
Would be nice if they made me want to get off the Tron bike and try to get something else.
I just I just
Um,
I just ride whatever looks the best. Like I want to buy those campy Bora wheels because they just look sweet, even
buy
though
them
they're
at your
not the
drops.
fastest. Dude,
Dude,
looking better in game is like an extra 50 watts, man. I'm telling you. I'm telling you. If you
that
look good and you like the way your avatar looks, you'll ride faster. That's
so
that's a
that
tip. That's a good tip.
well, let me finish real quick because there's 2 more
Oh,
races and
sorry. Go
then I
ahead.
want to
Yes.
comment
Go
on
ahead.
that.
Go ahead, James.
Week 7, November 23rd is a scratch race in France. The Petite Bocule. Someone's gonna rip me apart for that
Yeah, come on,
pronunciation.
dude.
47
Work on your
kilometers.
work on
I'm
your
not.
accent.
I took Italian in school. Okay,
Okay.
there's
All
no
right.
Giro courses dropping. And then last one to wrap it up is November 30th at TTT around Watokia's waistband.
Mm.
Um,
Heavy on the
so
TTs, the team time trials.
yeah, there's four TTs and 4 scratch races. I think
That's a
that's
lot.
well, I think what they're leaning on, Swift being the they here, is the popularity of the World Racing Tactical League's time trials, right? Like
Mm.
that is probably, I mean, they're in, I think I saw like rendition number 150 or something like that Nathan and David were commentating on. And I'm like,
Hmm.
I can't believe this is still happening. But, it draws people in. And it's probably the most pure version of online racing you can get, right?
Mm.
When you think about it conceptually. On the topic of looking good and equipment restrictions, someone did ask during this meeting, why is the socks thing a thing for Swift? So for those that don't know, there's all these rules around how your power meter must be calibrated, your height must be verified, your weight must be verified, you must have 2 sources of power. These are trainers you can and cannot use. There's very rarely talk about things in game that you cannot have. Usually it
Hmm.
comes down to the disc wheel. You can't use a disc wheel and you can't use a Tron bike. And outside of that, everything else is usually fair game. Swift said that you must wear socks. You
Hmm.
have to wear socks in game, and they have to have some height if you're participating in these races. And of all the things to call out, like no helmets, no glasses, but socks.
And
And
they
the
didn't
whole
give a
reason for
reason?
doing, the whole reason is it looks better. Whole Peloton wearing socks
There
makes
you
it look
go.
better.
There you
Yeah,
go.
I think helmets should be mandatory and things like
Okay.
that. But
Okay.
still, though, socks of all the things that we want to talk about,
Yeah,
it's
right?
socks, which is the thing they could potentially DQ you for.
Yeah.
Um, but looking good, marketing. You alluded to this earlier with the league, right? You're probably going to start to see a lot more hype around this league from Swift, and it's going to be focused more on um, like if you think of like a sports center concept, probably, right?
Hmm.
Or one
Hmm.
of those types of like informational shows, just to get people bought in. And
Hmm.
I'm very curious how the community is going to take that. I personally do not participate in any other form of online gaming. It's Swift. I don't participate in any of the other, like, PC based games or even PlayStation based games. But maybe there's channels where people just talk about video games all day long, or they talk about the people behind the computer. I think they're trying to leverage that community, and I think there is such a community like that out there. I just don't know what it is.
Hmm. I I don't know. I hope that they can grab different communities of people to this game. I hope that more people become engaged because it's community based and not just about pro riders, and things like that, or
Mm-hmm.
outside pro riders.
Yeah,
I can't wait until they have like pro licenses for racing on Zwift. That would be so cool.
I maybe that's coming
Okay. Okay.
actually.
Maybe.
So
Maybe
maybe
we'll
that's
talk
coming.
about it on our next podcast then. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the thinking too, right? Is people got to the Premier League. These riders have done enough of the pre-verification with Zada. They have had their data verified numerous times. The teams have a reputation for being honest. Um, then there's a whole group of people that are just getting into the scene, right? Those beginner riders. How do they get to this level? Because today it's kind of there's a pretty selfish community, I argue, at some point amongst some teams that are like, we're holier than thou, and you can't possibly join our team. You can't possibly race with our team.
Hmm.
And there's
Hmm.
some racing events that people look at and they're like, this looks pretty crazy. So I don't know if I'm going to sign up for that. So its primary goal is like the Premier Leagues can be open to everyone, but you have to earn a spot in there. So you have to get onto a
Hmm.
team. Your team has to qualify for it. And then how do you do that for new teams that come on, right? Your team and my team qualified, but there's a new team that forms next week, and they're building their roster, if you will, and they're largely B and C riders. And this racing league is usually for AA plus riders. Um, those riders got to get better, right? And then as those riders get better, they'll have a shot to qualify for the next series because they're going to look at the racers and the teams that were in this current series, and the ones that did not get the points, did not meet the mark, they'll be asked to go back down to the community leagues, and then that opens up spots for the Premier League. So there'll probably be some level of requalification
Hmm.
for new teams, and also if your team was removed from the league because you didn't get enough points.
Okay. That's good to know. Because I'm sure there's people out there thinking. And it's funny, on that subject of getting better and getting faster. Another podcast that we'll be doing is with this guy Rick, who's starting this YouTube channel called No Breakaways. And what he's doing is he's bringing on like a B and C rider, and he's bringing on an A plus rider, kind of like me, to talk about tactics and how these riders can get better to move up into the A categories. So what he's doing is he's bringing up a live stream that one of his someone he knows, a B rider. We go
Mm-hmm.
over what he did, what I thought he did right and wrong, and we see it on the screen. And then we take one of my races and we talk about what I did right and wrong, because it's a totally different dynamic in an A plus race. And hopefully that gives little bits and pieces to people out there and to the actual person who needs the help, who's coming on to this YouTube stream, which is kind of cool. So that's one way I think that as a community we're helping B and C riders get faster.
Would you recommend for because you've been racing for a lot longer than I on there. As a B or C rider, would you recommend they dive into streaming right away, or do you recommend they take some time to get familiar with the platform and then go into stream?
I mean, streaming in general is just fun. You can do it with that. You could be terrible at PUBG and still stream, right? It doesn't really matter.
Sure.
So I think it's more about knowing, do you want to spend the time, if you don't know how to stream, getting it set up and making a good stream for people to watch you when you might be
Hmm.
coming in last place. If you can deal with that, then who cares, right?
I
Like
don't
if
think
you're
you could
it's
deal with that, Adam. I
yeah.
don't think you could.
Me, I usually stream no matter what place I come in races. So I don't like just cut my stream all of a sudden if I'm doing bad, or something like that. I personally stream just because I ride faster when there are people cheering for me. When I see the comments going, and it's usually just my team who's watching me and maybe a few other people here and there.
Hmm.
And usually they're just kind of ragging on me or heckling me and stuff. But if I know people are watching virtually, I'm gonna ride faster for sure.
But you also use that footage that you recorded from your live stream to kind of go back and watch how the race played out. Do you find that to be an effective tool? And again, thinking about the position of those people that might want to be in the Premier League one day, whose team didn't get the shot, or maybe they're just new to Swift racing, right? Does that help you become a better Swift racer if you watch your live stream, or is it just entertaining for you?
Hands down, 100% yes. And the reason is because of this thing I'm doing with so both I think both of them are I think Rick is an A rider, but like a little bit lower level, and then the B rider. And we're actually recording tomorrow, but I showed them the tactical errors I did in A plus race where I came in
Mm-hmm.
sixth. And I tried to explain to them what I did wrong. We went all over it before we actually got on. And
Yeah.
they're still like, I don't get it. I see what I don't understand. You got to explain this to me again. So that's why I'm going to go on live with them and actually show. Like there was a tactical error I made where one of my teammates was leading out the sprint. My other teammate, Brian Hodges, jumped on that first, and I didn't accelerate, and I moved back to 15th, and I started my sprint from 10th, where he started his sprint from 6th, and he got like second, and I got 6th overall. So those
Mm-hmm.
differences, it makes a huge
Mm-hmm.
difference. So it's just like any boxing match out there. Yeah, when I don't do well, I go back and I look at what I could have done wrong. Not from a power or a heart rate standpoint, not from like the numbers, but more
Mm-hmm.
of it's more for the sprints. Where could I have made a move differently? That's mostly what I look at. The climbing races, if you just want to watch yourself suffer, which is kind of weird. I don't really suggest that. But watching a field sprint of like 20 or 15 to 20 people, left, it can make a really big difference for sure.
So you're starting out, you got a decent computer, and usually it requires pretty low bandwidth for you to stream these days, either internet connection or for your computer's processing ability. Obviously, you pay more for both, you get better quality product in the end. But it doesn't even sound like streaming is as much a big deal as it might be even just recording yourself or recording your race. And there's
Yeah,
enough free software out there. I use OBS, you use OBS, to just record your race, even if you don't have your webcam on, just for you to go back and look at it later. But yeah, if you
totally. Yeah,
live
you don't
stream
even
it,
have to stream live. You just record your races and look at them. And I think that's the last thing I'll say about streaming and helping people out is, um, if you want to know more about Zwift racing in general and you're just getting into it, there's about 200 hours worth of my races on YouTube. Just go to my channel
okay.
and you can watch all of the different races I've done and what I've done right to win, what I've done wrong when I've lost, and things like that. So it's a great tool for other people out there.
That's what I'm doing tonight. 200 hours of
Yeah, go
Adams.
for it.
Yeah,
Like a
your music
binge.
has your music has been increased in quality lately, so I'm
Oh,
proud of
why?
you.
Thank you. Why? Thank you. Yeah, I
Yeah.
went through like this whole like techno phase and then a deep house phase and then like this jungle kind of jazz phase, and now I'm back to like kind of a mixture of like fast beat but not like total house. So hopefully it's good. Hopefully. Yeah.
Still proud of you. Still
Thanks.
an accomplishment.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so I'm pretty excited to hear about that. That there's going to be a door open for those riders as they get better, right? To have a shot to qualify at this. Um, Obviously, it becomes harder, with the verification pieces, which is why recording and streaming is becoming more and more important. Because one of the tests you had to do to get into the Premier League, you had to do the Three Sisters test. So you actually had to go ride the Three Sisters course in Watopia, have dual recording on, record your screen, and also have like an iPad or something behind you, just recording your effort to ensure that you're not jumping off the bike, grabbing the drill, and turning the cranks, if you will, to get up it sooner. I'm impressed by those people that know how to cheat because it just seems like the amount of walls that are going up to kind of verify these things, it's just becoming harder and harder. Certainly is a barrier to entry, right? Just buying a second power source is that's a barrier for entry, right? So
Hmm.
for some people it's easy, for other people it's not. But when Swift is putting money behind these events, they want to make sure everyone is doing their part to be transparent and to be fair, which I think is really important. But yeah, just like seeing more B and C riders pop up, like women's racing is taking off.
Yeah,
I am
totally.
seeing a record number of applications come in to draft to join our women's squad, and it's frankly overwhelming. And a lot of them are not team hopping. We've certainly seen a couple people do that, but it's nice to see fresh faces. It's nice to see people that didn't take the platform seriously, that were also like, hey, this is going to be a great way to pass the time this fall and winter, and it looks like fun.
Hmm.
So I'm sure your team is probably seeing something pretty similar at this point.
Yeah, we're seeing we've seen a bit of a slowdown in terms of new recruits, just because I don't think we're looking for anymore. We do have a female, Angela Pitzer, who also won U.S. Nationals. She's kind of running things in terms of the women on our team and handling
Hmm.
the new recruits and stuff like that. But I know she did get a ton and whittled it down to a lot less in terms of who she was bringing on for all different specific reasons. But it seems like the women's only specific races. Like I know there's that, what is that one that's going on right now? Women's empowerment or something, that kind of series that's going on right
Hmm.
now.
Yep.
And that's awesome. And I see a group of like 30 or 40 or 50 women in there, which is pretty cool. I hope that we can get the same type of fields that we can for the men, because it's pretty cool. And I also hope that women will stream more too. I think our team is
Hmm.
pushing for a bit more of women to start streaming, and a bunch of them have kind of jumped onto that. So that's kind of cool to see.
And I think that Swift is setting that as a standard. When you're in the Premier League, they're asking every rider to have Swift open and racing on one device and platform, and then you have to have an iPad or an iPhone with your Zoom meeting with the video on, probably not the sound on,
Mm,
that they can then grab your video while you're riding and they can slap that into a broadcast. So it makes it all the more important, right, for you to feel comfortable on the bike, other people watching you, because it's just like in real life. When you're out doing a crit or a mountain bike race, I take that back. You can kind of go off into the woods and no one sees you again. But if you're doing a crit or
mm,
if you're doing a cyclocross race, right, even a running race,
hmm.
people are watching you the whole time. They're going to see you sweat. They're going to see you hurt. And that's probably why people really do enjoy going to those events. I know it's a bummer for the cyclocross series here in Colorado. No spectators, right?
Right, right, and that's
Which
like
makes
everything
sense.
about cyclocross.
Right, like the hand ups, the bacon, the hanging out in the team tent afterwards. Right, obviously different year, hoping for better next year. USA Cycling did just cancel Cyclocross Nationals. Um, I do want to come back to Nationals actually, because
Yeah,
there's an important point. I think everyone noticed there's been no Swift Nationals this year. Was there Swift
yeah,
Nationals last year? Can't
yeah.
remember.
There were,
Yeah,
there
those
were
2019s. Yep.
2015.
Yep. So I think that goes back to the thing I talked about prior in this podcast, which is you have a UCI based Swift Racing League, and then you have a Swift based Swift Racing
Hmm.
League.
Right.
And the national championships to date have been that Swift based Swift Racing League.
Hmm.
Um, and Swift just kind of had fun with it. And they're like, oh, yeah, like, Adam, you're the Swift US national champion. Congratulations. USA Cycling did not care, has not cared, maybe will care eventually at some point. Um, but certainly the pandemic has caused a lot of cycling federations around the world to be like, well, maybe we have to recognize this as a sport. And I'm sure they're looking for ways to monetize that as well. But they're on hold until further notice.
Yeah,
So
that's
there's
unfortunate.
no, yeah, but my biggest concern was, well, if you get into the Premier League, is that your gateway into nationals, right? At least here
Hmm.
in the US, you can't, I myself, not on a US amateur pro team, if you will, I can't just go walk onto nationals, right? The road, elite road nationals. I have to be on some team that holds a UCI license. Then my team would select me to go do that race. Um, but it doesn't sound like Swift has a plan quite yet for what nationals will look like. But I have a funny feeling it's going to be a lot more around federation based, and each federation is going to have their own different rules for what they
I
want.
think I got a plan for them right now. Forget about the UCI. You don't need them. Get rid of the UCI and stop trying to use an outside in real life racing governing body for a video game. Create your own internal governing body and make your own national champions that way. You don't have to have the UCI to do this. It's ridiculous. I think it's a waste of time. It's not helping the structure. And then people are losing out for 2020. And the people who are still 2019 champs get to wear their kits moving forward. Good for them,
Mhm.
but still, it
Yeah.
just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
It goes back to the same thing about rules and regulations. All they need to do for being certified to do these Premier Leagues, right? Make a card, just like if you were to go onto your USA Cycling license, right? It'll show
Yeah.
you, oh, you're if you have a coaching license, your coaching license expired, but you're still good for your road license. And then it shows
Yep.
you what you have to do to get that license back, right? So they should have the same thing. Oh, you have a premier license. Go onto this page on your tab on the Zwift website and click on what you need to do. Oh, I got to do the Three Sisters test and enter it. Okay, boom, it's done. Then the people at Zada approve it, and then you get your check mark back or whatever. There
Hmm.
is
Yeah.
no system in place for this. It doesn't make any sense. So they're just pinpointing things, saying, "Well, you got to get this done," and but we're not sure how many times a year you're going to have to do it. Like I know people who are doing the test over again in the last 6 months, right?
Hmm.
So
Yep.
the whole system, they're trying to base something from outside and bring it in, and then they're trying to base other stuff, but not tell you when you have to do it and when it expires. So, yeah, there's a
Well, I
rant for
mean,
you.
yeah, but no, it's on point. But you got to remember where they are as a product, right? Their core product is a video game, but their core audience right now are cyclists and
Right.
runners. I think they're still struggling with the running aspect, but that's their core product. Those people care about, as a whole, we care about our results. We care about being recognized for the things we've done. Very rarely do
Hmm.
people just go run a marathon or go do a 100-mile ride and you don't know about it. That's just who
I
we are as
agree. I agree.
athletes, right?
Totally. Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, what's the point in just winning the not USA Cycling, excuse me, the Zwift US National Championship digital jersey if your federation doesn't care? I think you
Mm.
would make the argument it doesn't matter. You never cared what USA Cycling thought of your Zwift win. You still
Right.
don't. And you're not
Right.
asking for USA Cycling to recognize you in some capacity. You got that recognition out of winning it in the game. But if Swift is trying to make money, they're still a for-profit business. They're probably going to go sell their product while Road Grand Tours is also doing the same thing. They're going to go sell their product to the federations and say, hey, Norwegian Cycling, we have the best gameplay. We have a verification board. We know how to make this an engaging platform if you so to choose to use it as the esports product for your national championship jersey. Oh, by the way, it's going to cost you some money. Let's talk about that. Right? They're
Mm.
not just going to say, yeah, go email events@swift.com, create the Norwegian Federation Racing Championship, and they're not going to make money off of that.
Hmm.
They
Hmm.
have to, just like the British, um, you know, e-championships that happened. What was that? 2 years ago now? Year
Hmm.
ago maybe.
No, last year.
That
Yeah.
that was filled with all kinds of scandal, if you will.
Right.
A little bit of a black eye, but those are things that you don't. That particular instance was not something you had to deal with before.
Hmm.
Um, with real racing, you had your other obstacles to come about, but I think that's why you're going to see these two leagues pop up, right? I'm the
Hmm. Hmm.
UCI USA Cycling Recognized National Champion for men and women. I am the Zwift National Champion of the Premier League. And
Hmm.
I think who cares about the other? I think you're going to see a pro rider holding that national championship jersey
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
everyone's going to be like, meh, who cares? I think you see someone from the community holding the Premier League one. You're going to be like we have today. And you're going to look at those riders. You're going to be like, that's the real national champion,
Hmm.
not the one that USA Cycling said, here you go. Right?
Exactly.
Same
Exactly.
thing with Worlds, right? We talked about Worlds, that here you go mentality is what Worlds are going to be. And that's going to make it I'm just going to say it's going to be a dull event. I
Yeah.
don't think it's going to be too exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot going on. There's just a lot going on, and I hope that that they'll at least give some type of definitive thing. I don't know why I can't get this image out of my mind where, 10 years from now, we're going to click on some tab on Zwift.com that says, past national champions. And it's going to have 2018, 2019, and then there's 2020, nothing, dash. And it's like, well, what the hell? Why are we keeping that like that? And that's just because of all these
Mhm.
politics that are going on. Doesn't make sense to me. Get that stuff done on the back end and then introduce it for a new year and just keep the same
Mhm.
thing going. That's the way I see it. But hey, I'm not the one playing the cards. I'm not the one rolling the dice. I'm not the one turning the cogs. So,
Not yet, but they
yeah,
are listening to the community. I think it's important.
yeah.
And I think that certainly was refreshing to hear. And there might be a calendar coming. You
Hmm.
might get that calendar after all that you've always wanted, Adam, so you can plan out
Yay.
your training.
Yay. Well, should we end it
Uh,
there, man?
I think
I
we
probably got to
should.
get back to baby watching. So, you know?
Yeah, I probably got to get back to my real job. But I think by the time we do another podcast, we'll know a little bit more about maybe even this first Swift Premier League race happening, and there'll probably be some other thing that pops up that we're going to talk about for sure.
Yeah, for people who actually are watching this, I think that the three things you can look forward as we're going to keep talking about this Premier League that's going on as it transpires throughout the fall. I'm going to be bringing Rick on from No Breakaways to talk about what he's doing with BNC riders, and I'd also like to bring on a female rider from our team to kind of talk about women's racing and get her take on it
Mm,
because we're a bunch of dudes. What do we know, right? So
that's true.
yeah.
Yeah, but we will be adding more guests onto the show. If you're listening and you have something you want to talk about, do contact myself or Adam, and we can,
Or write it in the comments, like you've been doing. Appreciate it.
or just write in the comments too. Yeah, we're always open to having more content on here, and we just do this for fun. There's no fancy sponsorship or any, thing
Nope.
like that. But Adam, good
All right.
talking to you. You enjoy the rest of your time up in Central Michigan. I'll be keeping everything under control here in Colorado, and hopefully we'll see you back here pretty soon.
All right. Take care, man.